All right, guys, welcome to episode 4 of the Pale Horse Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan. This is going to be our first episode of 2023, so I'm super excited. And I have with me my best friend, Tim. Tim's going to introduce himself for those who don't know him. Tim's been with us for a while. You can tell a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I've been here about three years now, a little over 3 years, something like that. Military, law enforcement, done both now since 2011. Was a medic for the Army, then finished up with that, went to law enforcement and done that for a little over 6 years now.
And now he's with a local department on the SWAT team as a medic.
Yes.
And so he helps all the med classes and helps play bad guy and does force on force sometimes.
There's
and
not
helps
too
out.
much around here. I try not to get my hands in.
Helps with blade, self-defense. He's a lot of fun. I get to beat him up on a regular basis. And he's a good sport about it. Plus, I mean, we get to snuggle. So I don't know what the problem is.
We make up afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. And so I'm excited to have Tim on. I've been wanting to get Tim on for a while. We're going to talk about med and a couple other things today in this episode. I think we need to focus on for 2023. Also for 2023, we are going to have it segmented out to really start hitting life topics as well as the training topics a little bit harder. Maybe dive into some deeper issues in Rod, and some of the guys are going to come back on and talk about some spiritual warfare and some things later on in 2023 and combine that with just our physical conflicts and things of that nature. And so I'm excited to start with some medical topics, and I think that Tim and I might talk about relationships, which we are definite subject matter experts on what not to do. And so we're going to have fun talking about that. It should be a pretty good episode, so you guys stay tuned and tune in. So I want to start with Tim, 2023 and medical classes, and medical training, medical gear. So what do you think people need to start buying or looking at for 2023 going into med gear, med classes, anything in the medical category?
So, and I think you've touched on this in your another episode of the podcast, 2023, pretty much everyone's saying it's going to be a rough year.
Yes, everyone.
So with that being said, I mean, any training you can get is valuable, but medical especially, because you just never know really what's going to happen. I mean, illness, injury, stuff like that is guaranteed to happen. I don't care who you are. So anything you can get a hold of, and medical supplies especially are hard to get right now.
I think a lot of people stockpile food and water. They don't stockpile med supplies.
Yes.
And whether it's antibiotics or, just basic things around the house to keep people going. A couple students of ours are asthmatics, and they don't keep an extra inhaler. And that's even good, guys, for like a natural disaster. It's cold, it's wintertime, the power's been out for a lot of students over Christmas, and just simple things that people needed or kids needed, insulin and some supplies there, and just medications that people are on need to be considered. So we teach a few med classes here. Stop the Bleed's the most basic, 2-hour class on tourniquets, wound packing, and direct pressure. We have TAC Med 1, which we do together. Mm-hmm. TAC Med 1 is really trauma-based. It's gunshot, stab wounds. It's based off of TCCC, which is taught to deployed combat personnel. And so that's how to keep you alive or your buddy alive in combat, essentially. We do Attack Med 2, which is my favorite class I teach all year. And that one is live fire on the range, doing shooter down scenarios and buddy down scenarios. And then we follow that up with force on force. So where each team is hit or each person's hit, your team has to treat them, hopefully not on the X, but a lot of times it turns into on the X. And then we see the whole team go down trying to treat one person.
Sets in for everyone.
Oh, yeah. And Jake and I talked about that on the Force on Force section last episode. So go look at mindset is what we did during Force on Force in the last episode. We do holistic and herbal plants and medications there, which is always good to learn. I've treated a lot of things domestically and abroad using plant-based medicine, and it works out well. We do survival pharmacology. So that's diving into how to treat anything from bioweapons to basic cold and flu, how to diagnose it without medical training or medical technology. We might not have anything but our sense of smell, sense of sight, sense of taste to diagnose something. And then how do we treat it? So the medications, whether it's fish antibiotics or remedies that we can store, how to treat that with proper dosing and that kind of thing. And honestly, they are nowhere near as popular as the shooting classes. There's always some guy that comes to the range with his 1911 and carries 5 backup mags, but no tourniquet. And we were laughing. Tim and I just got down on the range. We were just shooting and hanging out. And we were laughing about things that we carry on us every day and that the staff here carries on us every day is very different than 99.999% of the American population, including active duty military and law enforcement. We just don't see it. And, to our law enforcement students or military students or, students who I consider very squared away it blows their mind that we carry what we carry on us, I guess. So
flashlights is the number one thing that I've noticed that people just don't think about.
Nobody carries a flashlight. Yeah. It's crazy. I use my flashlight probably more than I use my pocket knife.
Yes.
I mean, it's wild. All right. So what do you carry on you?
On me. I carry
every day.
Every day. I don't care if I'm working or just out and about.
Date night.
Yeah, date night. I will carry a handgun, 2 extra mags. I have a tourniquet, some type of hemostatic dressing, so combat gauze.
I carry Celox Rapid, yep.
I also carry 2 pocket knives, one on either side. Also, there'll be at times I carry a fixed blade knife as well. But I also carry a flashlight and stuff to, I don't have them on, but I wear glasses as well. Stuff to clean my glasses. This is just stuff that I carry in my pockets every day. And I carry it in the exact same way that I carry it whenever I'm working as just out and about.
Yeah. I carry 1 extra mag, 1 folder, 1 fixed blade. So I don't carry 2 fixed blades. But yeah, same thing. Pistol, backup magazine, flashlight, keys, wallet, going through my pockets in order.
Yeah.
Cell phone, like foldable fixed blade, tourniquet stays on my ankle, readily accessible from both hands. Hemostatic gauze stays in my pocket in a cool homemade little pouch of ripstop so it doesn't become unsterile. But yeah, a lot of people, if I go to church or if I'm training church security teams, there's always dudes with earpieces and comms and handguns and all this kind of stuff. And, or wherever I'm at, doing law enforcement training or any type of training. And nobody that I know of carries a tourniquet on them or hemostatic gauze, and the likelihood of you needing a tourniquet, we were doing training a church security team up in Virginia not too long ago. And I mentioned that, and the security guy goes, wow, that would have been amazing. We had a lady that was doing food prep in the kitchen that severed the artery in her hand. Yep. Well, you guys should probably have a first aid bag. There's 18 dudes walking around with radios and handguns, but nobody had any medical gear. With a fully stocked kitchen, they do, food distribution and all kinds of stuff out of the church. And so, this stuff just happens. And so carrying medical gear on you. There's also a lot of law enforcement, I know, that do not carry either, or they don't train on it. They might carry a tourniquet, but it's somewhere. We had a law enforcement officer in one of our last classes who carried his tourniquet right side, small the back, And I was like, dude, can you access that with either hand? He goes, no, but why would I need to? It's like, well, you never know what hand you're going to get injured in. And statistics show in CQB, the number one place that we're shot is left hand and right forearm. I mean, number one and number two, it's in hands and forearms, because that's what's going through doors. That's what's presented. That's what bad guys are point shooting towards, that weapon system that law enforcement officer is producing. And so us as good guys are oftentimes shot in extremities, left hand, right hand, left forearm, or bicep, where that tourniquet might be needed. And we just don't see them either training for that, doing shooter down drills. In 2023, we do have a shooter down pistol, shooter down rifle class, where we're on the range working one-handed malfunctions, one-hand manipulations, putting tourniquets on under stress and engaging targets. And how do you then work that in low light? It's something that we did not too long ago in vehicle defense. We had a trauma block in the low light, which Tim, of course, helps me teach. And we were doing low light, at night, working administrative flashlights and tourniquets and behind cover around your vehicle. And it's just amazing the people that, and most of these were seasoned law enforcement officers and guys, and who had never done that or even considered it or thought about it or trained for it. I'm going, it's awesome that you guys are training, but we need to shift our training to start working more medical into those scenarios, I think, and real life applications. So you being on a SWAT team as a medic and a law enforcement officer and prior service combat medic, what are you seeing people need to start focusing on in the training world? So
along with that, a lot of the guys that I work with in law enforcement, they do carry a tourniquet. It typically is the cat tourniquet that we see carried, but they don't have any knowledge of any like hemostatic dressing or anything like that. In fact, I went to a class and they was like, "Oh, well, regular gauze is just as good as hemostatic gauze." I'm like,
until your carotids
I'm
severed.
Like, yeah, there's some arguing to do there, but
situational. I mean, is regular gauze bad? No. Can you still pack it just as tight? Yes, of course. We're not arguing that. But if it's a carotid, or if it's someone who is not trained and doesn't train in wet test or tissue test or to pack wounds, or just has the general idea of pull gauze out, lay gauze over wound, okay, that's packing. You want hemostatic gauze.
Yes. So, I mean, I think just the basics of medical is just what needs to be covered. I mean, when to put a tourniquet on, the different types of tourniquets there are, the different dressings there are, what you can do to fix pretty much basic problems. You just said it about the church security. I mean, someone in the kitchen got cut. How many times does that happen?
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard of it several times.
More times than some guy walks in that requires 18 guys with pistols.
Exactly. Because we're all around knives all the time. We're all in the kitchen cooking. I mean, it's something that's bound to happen. You mess with stuff long enough, something like that's going to happen. So, I mean, I think that's stuff that needs to be really focused on. I mean, you don't have to be a combat medic, or you don't have to be a cert team medic just to do the basics and know what you need to do to hopefully prolong someone's life until someone else can come and help.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it's all about. You're getting additional resources there, getting 911 there. 911 should be your first call. Response time in America right now, 17 minutes, somewhere around there. So you don't have to keep these guys alive for 50 hours, but just 10 or 15 minutes is a good start. Train church security teams, I'll go, okay, how many guys can produce a handgun, shoot, or self-defense, and everybody's raise their hand or communicate. And I say, all right, so then you have an elderly person fall in the parking lot, hit their head on the curb, and they're profusely bleeding. Who knows how to treat it and where the med bag is? Silence.
I was about to say, probably no one.
What I hear every time is, well, I think there's a nurse or a doctor that comes to this church. Okay. Well, if you're on the security team, then I consider that safety. Mm-hmm. Part of safety is not just being there to shoot somebody. It's being there. What if the power goes out? Do you have a plan to take flashlights that should be in your pocket and guide others out of the church in a safe manner? Most of the time they don't. you know? And so I think there's just a lack of focus on reality. That's what I'm going to call it. Elderly person slips on ice, hits their head. It's wintertime. Lot higher realistic component than some guy walks in, active shooter, and tries to kill everybody. Mm-hmm. I mean, just same thing with in their cars. We just talked, Tim and I talked vehicle defense together, and we're looking at windshield deviation and what bullets do when they hit the windshields and what different types of bullets do when they hit windshields and car doors. And that's amazing. We had law enforcement instructors, all kinds of instructors in that class. And it's awesome. I'm not saying we should not be training for that, okay? Because we should, and people don't, and we should. But then we got to the medical portion of it. And I think that's when people kind of started to tune us out.
Oh, yeah.
And
you can see it in their faces.
Yeah, it was like, oh, cool, you know, I can, until we start throwing these scenarios at them. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you accomplished all the, I'm going to say all the tactical components of class, but now you're injured. Now combine the medical in a tactical way, you know, because people don't, medicine's not sexy. It's not tactical. It's not, people don't think it's operator, you know, but the likelihood of you being injured if you are in some of those operator capacities is high. Law enforcement has right now, it's 51% chance. The first law enforcement officer to engage an active shooter, 51% chance he or she becomes a casualty. 51%, over half, that they become a casualty. There's been plenty of episodes of, badge cam or PD cam or live PD or cops where officers have been injured and they just sit there ready to die. I mean, it just is. It's mindset, and they might even have medical gear on them or medical gear in their vehicles. They might even have the medical training, but mentally, they've not been put in that situation to have to perform the medical aspect with a tactical aspect. Yeah. Right? I mean, your thoughts?
You're 100% right there. So, I mean, everyone, and I mean, I think this is something we talk about in TAC Med 1, that the days of getting injured and then calling for a medic or calling for doc or something like that, those are long gone. I mean, 17 minutes is a long time to wait, especially if you've got serious bleeding going on. So you just got to be determined to stay in that fight yourself. Or if someone you know is injured, you can't panic. You have to have the wherewithal to actually keep your stuff together and work to fix them. And I think that's something that we can provide you with all the skills and tactics in the world, but you have to make that decision yourself.
Yeah. It goes back to mindset, which is what we were talking about in the last episode. We're talking about more today. All right, so keeping in line with mindset, something just popped in my head that I'm going to let you rant on for a second. With mindset, the mindset of constant learning in the medical field.
Okay.
Here we go. Insert rant now.
I was about to say, we laugh about this because this is my biggest pet peeve. I have worked with nurses. I've worked with paramedics. I've worked with EMT basics. I mean, I've tried to work with, I have not worked with any doctors. They're a little above my pay grade. But even the one that I got diagnosed with something with that was totally incorrect, he probably should have kept up to date with his continual learning. But personal pet peeve, just because you get this training and it's awesome, that's what you need. What you need to do is continue to want to learn. I have a gentleman that working with us, and don't get me wrong, they teach a lot of good stuff in EMT basic, but they teach you the basics. I mean, we talk about self-defense. Your very basic self-defense is just enough to get you or somebody else hurt. I mean, that's the reality of it. I hate it. EMT's the same thing. You know just enough really to get someone hurt or killed. And I hate putting it like that, but hey, that's the reality of it. Continue to learn. So I learned whenever I went through EMT back in 2012, some of the stuff that we teach now is out of date compared to then.
Yep.
but you have to continue to learn and have to want to continue to learn. And I think anyone that is in the medical field should want to continue to learn. I mean, if you think you know it all, then you just need to hang up your hat and call it a day. Or if you think you are, quote unquote, the trauma god, which is a term that I have heard used, then yeah, you need to hang it up and call it a day.
Yeah, so when my mother's a physician, when she went through med school in 91, 92, somewhere in there, whenever I was staging kit and everything else and going through instructor certification for TACMed, she's like, man, tourniquets, why are you guys putting such emphasis on tourniquets? Like, tourniquets are bad. And this was 2012, 2013, back when it was like, no, tourniquets are good.
Yeah.
You know, and that started 05 to 07 and then later kept on evolving. And now it's everyone gets a tourniquet, you know. And so it's just funny to see how even in 20 years, you know, it went from tourniquets are bad and ineffective, and it's going to make your arm fall off, to no, everyone gets a tourniquet. Good job. Even if they didn't need one, it was just a moderate bleed. You put one anyway. They got to the hospital in 20 minutes. Life's good. And so there is just such an emphasis on a constant changing. And so when we teach, you know, it used to be, well, I was an EMT in 1985. I don't need TACMed. No, you definitely, like, you're the one that needs TACMed. Or it's, you know, well, my sister's a nurse. Your sister doesn't do you any good in the Walmart parking lot because you AD'd around into your thigh. I mean, just, it's not how that works. So the constant need for training and the fact that you should never settle. Even now, I've been teaching tactical medicine since 2014 or so, somewhere in there. And for us, the lessons coming out of Ukraine are shifting what we're doing and shifting the way that we're teaching active duty military or defense contractors, or starting to plan for 2023 curriculums. And we always update our curriculums every 6 months just because everything's always evolving. You know, we want to make sure it's grounded in science, but tactics change very quickly. And so it might be the stuff we're learning in Ukraine. Okay, the medicine is not changing. The tactics are changing. You know, now you've got drones and they're hitting casualty collection points within 5 minutes of wounding. And you see Russian soldiers, Ukrainian soldiers trying to do field care on the ground. And let's say a collection point in the back of a convoy, and that's what drones are hitting. That changes the way we need to be teaching. So even from our job, the medicine might not change. Maybe the tactics change, or maybe the medicine does change. You know, we should always be asking ourselves why. Fred Kohlberg, who runs T2 Trauma, back in the day, he was with the agency. It was a medic, and some ANA guys called in an airstrike on themselves, and he started pushing IV fluids to some and not to others, and that happened not just to him but a few others. So they started going, okay, why is our casualties that we are pushing 2 large bore IVs in, why are they dying? And why are the people that we're not giving IVs to, why are they living? That led to, after years, finally, you know, committees and the Committee on Tactical Combat Casualty Care and Department of Defense, they all started looking at this going, okay, increases acidosis, increases hypothermia, decreases coagulation, you know, dislodges blood clots. So now if someone is a gunshot victim of, you know, and has lost blood going into, you know, shock, it used to be, all right, shove 2 large bore IVs into them and start pumping them full of fluids. Now it's, no, don't give them fluids. Instead, they need whole blood products. If they've lost blood, they need blood. And so it's just such an interesting shift there. So then we see that take place, Iraq, Afghanistan, towards the end, the last, 4 years maybe, somewhere in there. No IV fluids for your trauma patients who've lost blood, give them whole blood products, and the PJs started carrying whole blood products in their helos and everything else. Now we're seeing that in the last year or so come to the civilian setting. Mm-hmm. Now it's, you know, if it's Guilford County EMS, now carries whole blood products and a fluid warmer on their advanced life support. Some of the other paramedic and agencies around here are starting to look into fluid warmers and whole blood products, and even the Coast Guard, you know, for some of the boat crashes are carrying some. And so now it's trickled down from the last 4 years with the Department of Defense and Command Tactical Combat Casualty Care doing pushing whole blood products. Now it's okay. In the last year and a half around here, it started to trickle into the civilian agencies. Okay, don't give them IVs for trauma patients. Instead, if they've lost blood, they need blood. Keep them warm. Give whatever you need to increase or to maintain a mean arterial pressure, MAP pressure. And the rest of the time, hey, they need either substitutes like plasma or they need whole blood products. Yeah. And so it's always evolving, people. And so just because you were an EMT in 1985 or your wife's a nurse doesn't mean that that's still relevant. And even for us, I like to think I'm a pretty decent medic.
I can attest to that.
You should be learning all the time. Medicine's not one of those that you can learn a skill and you're good. It's something that requires constant learning. So thoughts on evolving training, 2023, things people need to get into?
Yes. Take the entry level. Even if you've taken it before, you know what, take it, see what's changed. Because whenever I went through, like what he was saying, we were pushing normal saline to everybody. If you were out there, you got shot or something, you were getting normal saline. That's what I learned. And then as the years progressed, tactics changed, thoughts process changed. So get the basic training. If you feel like you've got a decent grasp on that, then go to the next level. Okay, well, now we're going to work in force on force or this, that, something to throw you off a little. And then once you feel like you've got a good handle on that, then we'll go to the next level. We'll learn how to do stitches, staples, different things like that. And the whole time you're also wanting to learn, okay, well, why am I doing this?
Right.
I mean, knowing to do it is a great thing. That's your basics. That's your foundation. But knowing why you're doing it is equally as important. I mean, you're doing it at this time because it'll buy you 10 more minutes. Because, I mean, that's the goal in this game is you're just buying time.
That's all it is. Slowing down the clock. You can't stop it. You can just slow it down.
So that's what we're trying to do is we're wanting to do this now because of this.
You said earlier it's knowing why. So we've been this 2023 is going to be rough, we think. Big into preparedness. So to me, it's okay, why? The whole goal of preparedness for me is self-reliance. It's not, some crazy conspiracy theory about China's going to invade, the power grid's going to go down. Sure, like any of those things can happen, absolutely, but no one knows what's going to happen. If you can just work on being self-reliant and train for a myriad of options or prepare for a myriad, no one knows what the next impending threat's going to be. It could be everything from Duke Power doing rolling blackouts and 17 degrees outside, like happened yesterday, or it could be, a cyber attack on the power grid. Nobody knows.
People shooting the substations.
Yep. If you can just work on being self-reliant, and medical is so key. So that's why I say, take the herbal med classes or take some of the survival pharmacology and just work on, yes, please take the trauma. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you carry a gun, you should carry a tourniquet. But take some of those classes to build self-reliance with the goal of, well, why? Well, I just want to be more self-reliant. Canine medicine is not a popular class. We do teach it, and it's very popular with law enforcement. It's not popular with canine or dog owners, civilian dog owners. Yeah. I think the last canine med class maybe had, one or two civilians, maybe? Everybody else was search and rescue.
And that was 2 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, they're popular with the DOD or law enforcement, but they're not popular with normal people. And I'm going, okay, well, I've got 3 working dogs. Why not train a little bit on canine medicine so that if something happens, I'm not saying that vets are bad, and I'm not saying that you should be practicing medicine without a license. That's not what I'm saying. But it's a peace of mind of going, okay, I'm a little more prepared and I'm a little more self-reliant. I can treat some of this stuff or at least work through and diagnose or know some of this stuff. And it goes back to peace of mind and self-reliance. And I think it's what that comes down to.
I mean, we teach in the canine medicine, dogs get into the garage, dogs ingest antifreeze or something.
Absolutely.
You teach how to combat that.
Yep.
I mean, which is not something just particular to canine dogs or working dogs or something like that. That can happen to anybody's.
Yeah, Thor got into a whole thing of rat poison. and we caught it, and it was a neurotoxin, and that's my boy. And I mean, within 5 minutes, he's treated, we stabilized, and he's absolutely fine. Full recovery. What would have killed most dogs if you catch it quickly, act fast, know what to do, and have the supplies on hand? Okay, like you've got quite a good chance of survival here, and that's what it's all about. That also comes back to having good supplies on hand and prepping. So, we have IFACs, so we carry individual first aid kits, and they're not first aid kits. They're trauma-based components, but we do carry some. Like in my truck, I have a trauma bag and a first aid bag. Mm-hmm. The first aid bag has epinephrine and bandages and, just your typical first aid stuff, guys. And then my trauma is chest seals and tourniquets and pressure bandages and, nasopharyngeal airways and decompression needles. Are you about the same way? You carry your boo-boo and your first aid or boo-boo kits, as I call them, and then your trauma kits.
Yeah. So in my vehicle that I drive to work, because that's when I'm in 99% of the time, I also keep medical supplies in my personal vehicles, but I don't keep as elaborate stuff. But in my working vehicle, I have my big medical bag, which is my trauma bag there. And then I also have a tiny first aid box that has like Tylenol in it and Band-Aids and just different small stuff like that.
And they are not the same.
No.
And when I first got into contract work, I carried one med kit on my plate carrier. And when you opened it, it looked like you busted a can of biscuits on the table and everything just kind of like spewed out.
Yeah.
Well, I had everything from like Band-Aids and Tylenol it was a fully stocked IFAC and a fully stocked boo-boo kit and like tweezers and medical and all shoved in a pouch. And so when you opened it, it was like, and everything fell out everywhere and it was a mess, right? I'd taken like one med class at that time.
All was there on our first.
Absolutely. They are not the same, okay? And don't need to be mixed. Trauma needs to be trauma, first aid and boo needs to be first aid and boo-boo, but the trauma kit, I tell everybody in TACMed, unless you can close your eyes, open your kit with both hands, so people keep it like weird small their back, and that's just poor choices. Open it with either hand, blindfolded, retrieve one item without struggling for it, the item I asked for, and hand it to me. Your trauma kit's not where it needs to be. Yep. Boo-boo kit, nothing's important. Nothing's under a time constraint. Nothing's under a tactical constraint. You have to, I don't care if it spills out. I mean, I prefer it not, but it's different. Your trauma kit on you should be staged to the point where I can unzip with either hand. I know exactly where it's at, and I can close my eyes, reach in, and grab a certain item, and it be there, whether it's low light conditions or not.
My boo-boo kit, it'll take me 2 or 3 minutes to get to.
Oh, yeah.
It's like what I tell people. If I've got to get to that in a hurry, then I don't got to get to that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And same with the EDC items. Your tourniquet needs to be accessible by both hands. And my hemostatic gauze, if that's what you carry, need to be accessible by both hands. Some guys get a little carried away on the... I'm not saying that more equipment is bad, so that don't just hear me. But they end up having like a pocket or an ankle hospital, as I call it. It's like NPA, it's chest seals, it's needle Ds. I mean, it's just like, it's everything. And so their ankle looks like a balloon.
Yes.
Or their pocket looks like a balloon. And it may last 6 months. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Before they're like, this is uncomfortable, or this is excessive, or I've not used. So I always say, carry the basics. If you need a tourniquet, you need a tourniquet. Improvised tourniquets have a 27% effective rate in America. They're just, belts are not effective. And then if you do somehow get a belt tight, now sustain holding that belt that tight for the next 17 minutes while the people are moving, and it just doesn't work. So get a tourniquet. Your MPAs, you can improvise somewhat with a finger sweep, chin lift, jaw thrust, recovery position. It's gonna do. It's gonna do well. Your chest seals, a gloved hand or a cell phone or anything non-air permeable. You can start crossing off some of those things with objects that you would already have, or positionals or or things that really don't necessarily require tools and might require you. And so then I think if you can get it down to carrying 2 or 3 items, then I think it's sustainable. And that's what it's about, is becoming sustainable and training on those. Any other thoughts on that?
No, you're 100% right there. I mean, I think whenever we do teach it, we talk about how pretty much the only thing we can't make do with is we can't make a tourniquet.
I can't make duct tape.
Yeah, can't make duct tape either. But we can't make a tourniquet, and we can't make hemostatic dressing. But we can do stuff that we can improvise on direct pressure instead of having a tourniquet, or we can use regular gauze or a freaking t-shirt instead of hemostatic gauze. But it's stuff to buy us that extra time to hopefully get to that 17 minutes where somebody else with all the equipment, because, I mean, even with all the medical stuff that we both carry, we don't carry an ambulance.
Yeah,
we don't carry oxygen. We don't carry anything
drugs
like that. So we don't carry the fun stuff.
Right.
So that's pretty much that. I mean, carry what you can and still be comfortable, because if you're uncomfortable, you ain't going to carry it. It's going to be great for a week, and then it's going to get tossed in the back of the truck, and that's going to be it. So it's consistency in doing all these things. Yeah.
And speaking of gear, I'm going to go off on a side tangent. I think we talked on episode 1 or episode 2 about, I think in probably every episode, about the downfall of the training industry and the tactical industry and how it's steadily crashing, in my opinion, and the quality is steadily crashing. Stop the bleed kids. Okay, now I teach Stop the Bleed. I'm an instructor for Stop the Bleed. I like Stop the Bleed kits. That's great. But you have corporations, entities, churches who are buying Stop the Bleed kits for active shooter. Medically speaking, the likelihood of you needing a tourniquet in an active shooter is extremely small.
None.
Yeah, it's in the last, I don't know, 3 years or so, time-wise. I know over 2, no one's died from extremity hemorrhage. So therefore, your tourniquets are useless. 89% are all chest and torso. Well, you can't use a tourniquet on chest and torso. So that rolls out 89% of your injuries there. And then we get into head is high. And so the likelihood of you needing a tourniquet is very, very, very low. And so while I do love Stop the Bleed kits, because motor vehicle accidents, boating accidents, my knife slipped in the kitchen, chainsaw, students that we have taught that have then saved their life or someone else's life, almost all of them have been tourniquets.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying tourniquets are bad. Let me say that now. Tourniquets for active shooters are almost useless. Yeah. And just 89% are, chest and torso. That's where chest seals come into play. So these Stop the Bleed kits might have, so the last one I saw being advertised on Facebook, 8 tourniquets and, the whole front pouch is nothing but tourniquets, and then it had some pressure bandages and like a pair of shears. And then they had these cool little throw kits that people could throw out as if everyone's going to know how to apply tourniquets. I don't understand all that either. It's kind of, and this was a school system that we were teaching that had all this stuff. Like, oh, we're going to throw teachers these cool modules, and they had tape, shears, pressure bandage, tourniquet. That's what these modules had for the school system we were training. And they're watching this. We've already told them that that was useless. So they're going to pass this. And so I was like, well, do the teachers have Stop the Bleed training? Do they know how to apply tourniquets? Like, no, that's a really good point. Okay, well, that comes first. And then I'm going, okay, so let's look at I pulled out the last 5 school shootings and looked at the casualty fatality rate, injury patterns, mechanisms of injury. And I was like, congratulations, you would have saved 1 person, maybe. And they had secondary injuries that are probably not going to be survivable. And so the school system's going, okay, we just spent $8,000, on X, Y, and Z components. When really, the whole thing should have been chest seals and tape. There you go. Maybe some pressure bandages and chest seals.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. So train for your purpose. Think about what your purpose is. Is it reliance? Okay, then I'm going to start staging, like preparedness. Start staging antibiotics and suture material and get training there. Is it active shooter? Lots of chest seals and pressure bandages. I mean, just 89% torso. If it's motor vehicle accidents or chainsaws or general everyday life stuff, tourniquets, in our experience, are what you're probably going to, most likely going to need based on statistics. Not our opinion, based on statistics, it's tourniquets. So think about purpose and let that purpose drive the mission and drive the training. Is that fair?
So you're basically changing your, and I'm going to call it loadout to what you're preparing for. I mean, we've talked about the school with the throw kits a lot, and I've pushed that also to different people within our department, is the fact that tourniquets are great. Tourniquets are more for our law enforcement guys because, just like with military, we wear body armor. So where are we going to probably get hit and injured? Arms, legs. So that's where that comes into play. But as far as for school shooters, that they don't do anything for. But that's what we're seeing the military work on, because, the military's, they're the most up to date on everything. Well, yes, but you got to look at what they're working with. I mean, right. I don't see kids going to school with body armor every day.
I
never did.
If you look at combat, survivable casualties, 60%-ish. It changes every year, but in the 60s, it's extremity hemorrhage. Tourniquets are going to save 60% of the people. So they push tourniquets. Again, we see that in reality. We've had multiple students save their life or somebody else's life after taking Stop the Bleed or TACMED, and that's from chainsaws, knives, boating accidents, car wrecks, things of that. And then tourniquets is where you're at. But again, they're not children at school not wearing body armor.
Yeah.
And people don't know Stop the Bleed is the big initiative, and I love Stop the Bleed. Like I said, I'm a national instructor. I support them. I teach Stop the Bleed. It's amazing. Lots of students took Stop the Bleed, and they've saved their life or somebody else's life after taking ours. We have numerous success stories. But Department of Defense owns Stop the Bleed. Mm-hmm. So what the DoD pushes, Stop the Bleed and the Hartford Consensus and the Committee on Trauma and all them who work under Stop the Bleed or work over Stop the Bleed, they push it too. It's not quite the same.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're going to look at. So I guess it's going to be, my goal is find your reasoning, find your purpose, your objective.
You can have a bag for all three. I mean,
sure,
for
absolutely.
long-term survivability, for your active shooter kit, or your everyday accident bag.
Yeah, I mean, I have a dedicated wilderness first aid bag where I teach wilderness first aid. The things that I carry in wilderness first aid, it's 9,000 triangular bandages because you can use them for everything.
Yeah.
I don't carry a bunch of triangular bandages and about anything else I use. But in wilderness first aid,
it's important.
That's one of the biggest things that I use and need. So, yeah, I mean, you do dedicated bags or find your purpose and then start training and working toward that purpose. If your purpose is reliance or active shooter or whatever.
And I think something I forgot to talk on earlier that you need regardless of whatever your purpose is and something that's often overlooked, and we've talked about it before, is a freaking quick litter.
Quick litter. North American Rescue, quick litter, $20. Yeah, $20 on North American Rescue's website. There's one in my truck. There's two in the house. There's one in the active shooter bag. Quick litter. Cannot emphasize that enough. If you are a corporate safety guy or church security, quick litter. Okay, it makes carrying people amazing for $20 and doesn't take up a lot of space. I mean, my active shooter bag's like that, and there's a quick litter in it. So
because I mean, we'll teach it in class of patient movement. And I'm the guy that has to be carried. And I weigh 215, 220 pounds, and seeing some people try to move me is stressful for me.
Stressful for me.
And but then it's like, oh well, $20, we'll put you on a quick litter, and now all of a sudden you can drag me wherever you want to. Or you can get someone else to help, and 4 people carrying me is a lot less stressful for me than 1 or 2 people trying to pick my butt up and carry me off.
Okay, so I'm going to shift gears here while we're on the topic of purpose and objective. And know, find the why that you're going to do something, and then start driving toward that why as your goal. 2023. So we talked about earlier, I mean, you're on the range, relationships, and then stress in the gym and meal prep and that kind of thing. So for 2023, go into your gym focus. I know Justin Stevens on that episode 2. You guys can check that out. Justin is definitely a endurance, and that's awesome. You're definitely on the strength side, which is also awesome. Like I think there needs to be a mix of both.
Yeah.
And so go into your 2023 kind of thoughts on gym and lifting and food prep, and what does that look like? And then even balance in stress in life and talk about that.
So, yes, so I come from, and I'm sure at some point you'll see my father on here. He was a competitive power lifter for years, and did great at that. So as I got out of the military, because I could only be like 180 pounds in the military, but I could run a lot, I changed my focus to more strength-based. Also, whenever I studied martial arts for a year, I don't want any fight to last that long. I mean, we joked about this earlier, about Justin Stevens. He's an amazing guy. He was in my first unit in the military. And I think his thought process is awesome.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
I can just tell you, though, I'm not running any more than like a mile or two because I'm a fat kid and I don't like to. So if I have to run that far, I'm just going to fight you. And so that's just my thought process here. I mean, different people, different thought processes.
Tim, earlier before we started the podcast, said, I don't care about winning. I care about both of us losing. And I said, great. That's how we can start the relationship topic. So true.
It's like whenever we was on what he said, you know what? I may get hurt, but you're going to hurt too. I'm cool with that because, I mean, I've got a little more padding whenever it comes to that. So yes, getting into the gym, you do need a mixture of both. I'm starting to work more endurance into my training. Yeah. With that being said, I'm still not going to go out here and run 5 miles. No, I'm still doing a lot of weightlifting. Along with that, I'm just working more sets and reps into it. I will tell you, here recently, because of the holidays, I've not got to be in there as often as I should, but in the same token, that goes back to the same thing of whenever we were talking about gear. If it's not comfortable, you're not going to do it.
Yeah, Justin Stevens hit on that too. Think about your purpose, identify your purpose and goal, and that's what it comes down to.
And you've got to make it to where you can still live a comfortable life and still go to the gym, still get in your workouts. I mean, I tell you, I work typically Monday through Friday. On the weekends is whenever I do my meal prep. I'm not a meal prep expert. I go on Facebook or TikTok or YouTube, and I find someone who is, and I copy them. Let someone else do that part of the work for me. I'll make it. I find what I want to eat, and I go from there. And I have not done that until the last year, really probably the last 6 months.
But you say you feel better.
Oh yeah, I feel much better. I went from being probably about 225 pounds down to, I think last time I weighed I was 213, and I can actually move now. I can scratch places on my back I couldn't reach before. So that's always a good thing. I don't have to lean up against a doorpost anymore to get that done. But no, I feel better. I can move better. I mean, this past week I helped with something with our agency and ended up running 1.5 miles. Whenever I was 225 pounds, that would not have been something I could just up and decide to do one day.
Yeah.
I would have been miserable and give out, and they would have had to been working on me. And as the medic, I think that's a little...
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, it's backwards. But I told them, I'm like, I'm not going to expect y'all to do it if I won't do it myself. So that's how I am. Not everyone's like that. But it's a great stress reliever for me. I mean, I can't say that So my father told me something back in the day, and I'll share it here, is it may not be for everybody, but it's got something to offer everybody. I mean, you may not want to go in there and be some world-class power lifter, or you not want to go in there and be a marathon runner, but I think you can go in there and, you know what, get on the treadmill and work up to where you can run a mile or something, or get on the bike and pedal for 5 miles or something, which really isn't that much on a bike, or go in there and just lift some weights and just feel better about yourself. And I think that'll incorporate confidence, and confidence is key to anything we do.
Definitely. I was going to talk about that with relationships and work some confidence in relationships. Yes. All of the staff here are so big into confidence because confidence fuels us for the fight. It just does. I mean, a lot of times it just keeps us fuel for the fight. And we even talked about that in force on force. Those confidence levels have to be there, and not arrogance or cockiness or stupidity, but confidence is good.
Yeah.
And making the bad guy's confidence level is go down is very good. And doing stupid things to make the bad guy level's confidence go up is very bad. And so much of the fight fuels on confidence levels, because confidence levels is what actually influences a lot of our values, and values make decisions.
Yes. So I'm going to get him to talk on something real quick, because this is my favorite speech of the knowns and unknowns, and I try to push it out to everybody that I can.
So our brain works off of knowns and unknowns. So if I look at Tim and I say, Tim, choose a box. I have 2 perfectly wrapped boxes. Presents. It's Christmas time. Presents. Say choose one. I bet you he's going to choose the left one.
Yeah. Because
he's left-handed, and I know he's left-handed, and it's bias, right? So Tim's going to just go, okay, he's going to grab the left one. I could have predicted the left one because I'm psychic. No, it's because I study predictive human behavior and teach predictive human behavior. And so Tim chooses the left one. And I go, okay, one contains $1 million and one contains a bomb. What's he going to do? He's going to go, here's that present back, right? He's probably going to pick one up and shake it. I'm just kidding. Don't shake it. He might look for anything. He might think about weight. He might not choose anything at all, right? In which case I'm going to make him. And he's going to go, oh my gosh. And instead of just grabbing one, which I predicted was going to be left, he's going to put some time, effort, thought, decision-making into it.
Yeah.
Decisiveness in the decision-making. Instead of just a knee-jerk reaction, which I predicted was going to be left and I was right, it's going to be, okay, I don't know which one he's going to choose, because he might be looking for indicators. So what if you see like an oily stain on one? Or, one has one corner that's heavy and the rest of it's empty, right? That might indicate a bomb. Or if it's, fully stacked equally, money's heavy. People don't know that money's heavy. Okay, might be money. So there's little things we're going to look for, right? And I'm going to look at Tim, and Tim's face is probably going to tell me a lot what he's looking at.
I'm going to be sweating.
Body language. So it all goes back to, we have to take in knowns to make rational, good decisions. Your brain does not, and Jake and I talked about this in episode 3. It's like a Honda Civic on 6,000 RPM, just pegged out, going ring. You're not going anywhere. You're not doing anything. You're spinning wheels. If you don't have those knowns, give yourself a known, and it shifts those gears and it resets. So what that does is it allows us with those knowns to make decisive, informed decisions. The reason they're informed, and why we say it's informed, if I say, he made an informed decision, what does that even mean? It means that he assigned a value to something, right? All decisions, this goes back to relationships. Use this with your wife or husband next time you guys have an argument. Honey, decisions are based on values. It's true, you'll be single the next day, but it's true. Decisions based on values. Your decisions show me what you value. How do we make decisions? We have to have knowns, okay? And those knowns are then used to assign to values. Those values are then used to influence our decisions. So Tim sees that one's awkwardly weighted. It has oil stains on it, and it's leaking some weird fluid, and it's ticking.
Yeah,
all of those, all of those are going to be pieces of information or intel that he can then use to assign a value. Like they're knowns, assign a value. That value then influences his decision. He said, "Yeah, I'm not choosing that one. Great, it's an informed decision." So we have to work on the knowns versus unknowns, and that goes with confidence levels too, right? The other thing that informs our decisions, or is based off our decisions, in forms of assigning values, is confidence. So if we are more confident, we have a higher likelihood to stay in the fight. We have a higher likelihood of a more decisive or informed fight. We have a higher likelihood of a more violent encounter. We can produce more violence if our confidence level is high and stay in the fight longer. If our confidence level drops, we make poor choices, uninformed decisions or decisive movements. We have a less likelihood of us being violent in the encounter, a less likelihood of us prolonging or staying in that encounter, and ultimately, if bad guy reads our confidence level is low, we have a much higher risk of being attacked. If our confidence level is high and we produce that, it's a lower likelihood that we're attacked. So that's why confidence levels are so important in our decision makings and in assigning knowns. And the bad guy's doing the same thing. A cheetah is approaching a herd of gazelle, right? And it's stalking that gazelle. And the cheetah steps on a twig, and the gazelles all turn and look at the cheetah. Right? The cheetah doesn't choose to then sprint and attack. The cheetah then goes, "Oh no," and crouches and gets low and sits for a minute and observes. Why? The cheetah's confidence just crashed, and the gazelle's confidence, oh, maybe we saw it coming, right? It's on alert. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily ready. It just means that they're on alert. That cheetah's confidence level crashed. So if we can do something to make bad guys' confidence level crash, or to increase ours, we have a much higher outcome of positive or negative values assigned to that decision. Is that the speech that you wanted?
Yeah, I love that speech.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that's because, and we use it a lot in the force on force, but I mean, I think we've also talked about, you can use it in everyday life.
Yes.
I mean, people get stressed about things, and I've given that speech, I don't know how many times, about, okay, what I need you to do is just give me 3 knowns. The wall's green, I'm wearing blue jeans, and the floor is brown.
Yeah.
And that will allow people just to, okay, we're cool now.
The world's not ending.
Yeah.
I know something.
Yeah. People have panic attacks, give them 3 knowns, and you know what? It's like, oh, okay, we're good now. I can think through this. And so, and confidence, like what he talked about in relationships, is very key. I mean, we talked about this on the way back from lunch, was the difference between cocky and confidence. Cocky is not attractive, at least to me.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Confidence is the bee's knees.
That's right.
And so, I mean, that's what I look for. I mean, I want someone that holds their head up a little higher, that is proud of themselves. And so I think that's just something that sticks out to me. I can't say that's the same for everyone, but in my personal experience, that's what I like.
It's funny, as you were sharing talking, it popped in my head. I said this thing on episode 1. In looking for a girlfriend, if you would ask me 6 months ago, I would have said, body, or what, general, Bonnie McMurray off of Letterkenny. If you were to ask me now, the most turn on thing I could ask for is confidence to not need a man.
Yes.
It's confidence to be okay alone and be grounded in themselves and okay with themselves and not need me or not need anybody.
Yeah.
That would be the most attractive quality to me right now. I'm not saying they give you the cold shoulder but so many of my past poor choices in relationships has been a need for someone. And exes who had lots of red flags and were terrible choices I should have been with, it was a constant need for male attention. Well, sometimes that could be attractive, depending on what your goal and purpose is, and it could be easy. but it would be someone who I could, who, you know, even when we're doing bad or have a rough patch, you don't need someone else to validate you. You don't need anybody else. I know that you're going to be at home. You can be mad at me all you want to. You'd be sitting your butt at home watching Netflix, right? Because you're just confident in who you are and your objective and identity, and you're there. You know, we may be mad at each other, but I don't have to worry about you going and texting somebody down the road, you know, to get that void filled or get that need, that validation, that ego stroke. You're confident in you. You're confident in the relationship. You're confident in yourself. You're confident in your true purpose, mission, identity, and you don't need somebody else. That would be someone that I could trust and someone that would be the most attractive quality to me. It's just that confidence.
Oh yeah, you're 100% correct there, and I mean, and I think that's something that comes with age, along with that.
Healing yourself.
Yes. So if you asked 18-year-old Tim what he thought was attractive,
oh yeah,
it's going to be different than what 29-year-old me says. I mean, and it's like what you said. It's that confidence, because I've dated the one who was 10 out of 10. Just
oh yeah,
yes, but they, like what you said, they needed male validation.
Absolutely.
And so I mean, and it was it was back and forth for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a roller coaster.
It's I can't remember who the quote was from, so I ain't gonna pretend to know. But it's one of those. Basically, the quote was basically saying, "I don't need someone who needs me to be happy. I need someone who's happy by themselves,
right,
and I'll be happy by myself, and we'll come together, and then we can build something."
Yeah. And
so I think that is important, because I mean, you don't have to be shoved, for lack of a better term, shoved up each other's butt 24/7. I mean, I know what I like to do. My girlfriend, she may have something she likes to do, and you know what? I can take interest in it, and she can take interest in mine, but it's not necessarily our.
You're not assuming each other's identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, not many people are into the, like what we talked about, medical isn't sexy.
Yeah, sure.
So it's not many people want to dive as far as I have into it. And she may like watching Hallmark movies, and I will tell you straight up, within 5 minutes, I'll call the rest of the Hallmark movie and tell you what the plot is.
I'd rather burn the house down than watch a Hallmark movie.
So, I mean, that's not saying I won't watch a Hallmark movie, but I'm not spending all day watching. I'm not going to spend all day binge watching it. Just as I wouldn't expect her to be very involved in, okay, tell me all about this new rifle you're building or everything like that, and know all the fine details about it. If that's not her thing, I mean, because I'm not watching Hallmark, but, you know, we could take a little bit of an interest. Okay, well, can you tell me what you're doing? Yeah. Give a basic explanation. Cool. I'll sit down and watch a Hallmark movie with you.
If I go, honey, give me my Mark 12, I need you to bring back the right gun from the safe.
Yeah, I'm not asking for much here. But, and I think that's important in any relationship.
Yes, and that's something, that's why I'm not dating right now, is I'm trying to work through and fix things by myself to get there. And I think that fixing yourself is so much more important than trying to dive into anything. You know, if you go back to scripture, right, Paul talked about being single, and singleness is a gift. And our wonderful podcast director, Britt, said that. We were talking back when we first met, and I was like, you know, we were just discussing it, single life. And that's something that she brought up. She's like, singleness is a gift. Like, you need to be enjoying your gift. And I'm like, no, singleness is not a gift. Like, that's not. But no, it's not that there's not options out there. I just don't want it. I want to work on me because it is such a gift. There is so much more time and energy and focus you couldn't put into you. If I want to blast praise and worship music or listen to a podcast driving down the road, I don't have to entertain conversation. I can do that. If I want to, before bed, read a book or lift something or, you know, have my own me time and God time, or maybe just sit there and journal. I don't have to worry about someone else watching TV or, in this. And that sounds so selfish. It's not me trying to be selfish. It's me trying to fix and work on me to better serve them in the future, know? And I think that the gift of singleness there's definitely merit to the gift of singleness. It's all about mindset and changing your purpose and goal. So right now, purpose and goal is not for me to find someone to fill me or fill that void. It's me spending time with God or working through myself and my own issues to fix and fill that void, and I think that's where I know that's where I'm at, but I think it's all about resetting that purpose, that mission. And like you said earlier, I don't need someone that needs me. And I think I mentioned this in episode 1, but I think that the exact opposite of love is need. Because when you need someone, you can't love them. Mm-hmm. Love is selfless. Love is unconditional. Well, if you need them, how can you be selfless and unconditional? So I know, at least in my past and in most people our age, and I mean, about everyone, it doesn't have to be age dependent, but I think especially the younger generations, it's not I love you, it's I need you. I mean, you can say I love you, but what it turns into, and I know this makes me, I love you, do you love me? Right? I mean, think about it, or right. It's all based on, it's a transaction. Mm-hmm. Well, in a transaction, how can it be selfless? It really can't. It's merit based, or it's transactions based, or it's I love you. Christmas time, we saw that in the family. Our distant family, not even our family, close family, did a pretty good job, but it's I love you this much. Do you love me back this much? Think about it. And so I think that's for 2023. I would love for people to work on themselves and not be so focused on getting that from someone else.
Yes.
I think that needs to be, especially for men, right? We have a lot of males that watch us. I'm going to tell you, it's not the girlfriend or future spouse's fault 99% of the time. It's your fault. I'm going to say that to women too. It's not your husband's fault most of the time. It's your fault. So if you can work on you, then everybody gets better. Think about that, okay? And so we're going to dive into relationships. I didn't know if we were going to or not, but we're going to, because we're just there. We are committed. So goals and objectives. Resetting your goals, finding purpose. We just talked about that with med. We talked about that with survival. We just mentioned that with gym. Now we're going to do that with relationships. Okay. Tim's in a new relationship, so he's all happy and giddy. I think that we need to get away from the romanticism of relationships. I think that you said earlier, gone are the days where we sit there and yell for a medic. We see it in law enforcement shootings. We see it in whatever else, because that's what Hollywood told us. Mm-hmm. Watch Saving Private Ryan, right? The dude gets shot. He lays there and goes, oh my gosh, I'm shot. I'm going to need you to stick some fingers in it and start clamping some stuff off and help me here. Like, I don't need you to just lay there and yell for a medic. I need you to crawl to me and pop a smoke grenade and go to work, I think that Hollywood has done that to us to a degree. Some animals do the same thing. I think it's a lack of mindset. I think our mindset right now has been romanticism, where it's fairy tale love, it's Hollywood love, and I'm talking to women right now too. It's, or for dudes, this isn't as easy as I thought, or
100%.
That's training's the same way, guys.
Maybe this comes from Hallmark movies.
Okay.
Maybe it does. I don't know. No, whenever it comes to, you're never going to have just that fairy tale love, in my opinion. I mean, there's going to be hard times. I mean, I've been told about several times of, oh, no, this isn't working out. You need to go somewhere else. Well, no, because, just because things are hard right now doesn't mean that it's going to always be that way. I'm sure whenever you started shooting, just as whenever I started shooting.
I came out of the womb great.
Well, I did not. And I'm willing to say that. I'm still working on it. So just you had to build to that. Now, I mean, there are things that there can be too many red flags.
So Tim and I, we have a joke that we are the king of red flags. The larger and brighter the red flag, the harder we chase to it like a bull.
Yes.
I mean, if that red flag is the size of this house and a fire truck, Tim and I are going to try to date that. Like, that's just,
there's no two ways about it.
In our past, we are on a goal of doing better. In our past.
Yes. That goes back to 18-year-old me and 29-year-old me.
1 year ago me. And so we laugh about that. But yes, Ben Stewart has an amazing book, Single, Dating, Engaged, Married. You guys should all read it. Even if you're married, even if you're engaged, even if you're single, it's a portion for everyone. And he talks about stoplights. If it's green, go. If it's yellow, kind of hold back. If it's red, either stop and get out before you just keep going red light, red light, red light, red light. Because I, in the past, knew that person was not right. Yes. I just knew that person was bad. I knew that they were going to cheat on me or they were terrible people.
For anyone that doesn't know, we have almost the same dating history without dating the same people.
Yeah, personalities are just, the people we've dated, personalities are the same. And so, yeah, and I would stay for like a year until they left me.
Yeah. And
it's like, what? I knew from day 2 it was going to crash and burn. And then day 367 came and they left. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I never saw this coming, or my heart is broken, or it's for the next month, it's, a plane crash. And I'm like, dang it, if I would have left at day 2, I think that our criteria and mission needs to change. Yes. Our goals need to change. I said something, wrote in my journal. I said, when 2 people get together, it's not that everything betters. In fact, all the bad aspects just double. Everybody brings hard or bad aspects, and then the reality does set in. And so I think that's true. We have to think about that as, yes, people do have, bad aspects to them. So, yeah, like there were really big red flags we shouldn't have ignored. So you guys don't like the same taste of movies, or you had an argument. That's not the end of the world, but there are some red flags. Do they love Jesus? And do you love Jesus? Like, that should be one that Britt and I, our wonderful podcast director, whenever she found a new guy, it's like, okay, does he love Jesus? Like, we need to have that talk, and what are you running the same race? Are you driving down the same street? You can't have your green lights or red lights and have green lights and red lights, and you guys are on completely different streets. You need to be on the same street, same goals, same objectives, same missions. And that's what that's all about too. Yeah. So thoughts?
So, and you're right there. I mean, in my past, I haven't dated a whole lot of people that would come to church with me or anything like that, or went to their own church. And now I'm working to better that. I mean, I think you were spot on with the being single as a gift, because I was single for a good long time. And I couldn't figure out why. I hate to say this, but I did not want to work on myself.
Yeah.
I'm fine. This is just the way I am. And that's not the way you can. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not the way you can be and make any progress. So I have changed that. I have improved upon myself. Now the girl that I'm currently dating, she goes to a different church than I do. But I understand it. That's no big deal to me. And it has not always been easy. I mean, me and him have talked about a lot of what's went on, and it's not always been easy. It's been struggles at times, but at the end of the day, it's okay, well, are you happy? Is it progress? Yeah. Okay, then we can work with that.
Might be an orange light.
Yeah.
Or a yellow light.
Yeah, it might be, yeah. It's not red and not big as a fire truck. So, and that was something that was very important to me. Was just, I mean, and anyone that I've dated, I've told this, because I think this happens a lot in relationships, is you have like your first 2 dates, and it's like, oh, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite this? What's your favorite movie? What's your favorite food? I mean, you try to knock out all this stuff in like the first 2 dates.
Oh, I'm like that. Like 20 questions first day.
And see, I'm not. And I think other people think that that's an odd thing about me, is because one thing, it takes a lot for me to actually date someone because I was comfortable being single.
Sure.
I grew, and that was my comfort zone, my safe space. But whenever I do actually date someone, I'm like, okay, I actually see a future with you. So to me, it's like, I've got 20 years to learn this. I'm not going to play 20 questions on the first date. That's how I was.
Oh, I'm the opposite.
And I mean, and still am. I mean, I'm like, okay, I always want to learn something every day. I mean, I always want to learn how to improve upon things. And, I mean, and I don't ever want to change who I'm with. I want to enhance. And I think that's the key difference on wording, I think, there.
Okay, so journal entry from 3 days ago. I said I was looking for whoever I was with to try to fulfill me. You know, I said even now, the thought of, you know, getting with someone can quickly turn into a hope, desire, a dream, or finding a spouse can quickly become a life fulfillment. And at the end of the day, that is a need. That's needing someone that's not loving someone. You can't use someone as a basis for life fulfillment. And at the end of the day, I wrote, that's idolatry, you know, because technically only God can meet that fulfillment. We were created for his image, you know, and so I can quickly turn not a certain someone, you know, but the idea of a someone or idea of a spouse or idea of a life or whatever can quickly turn into that fulfillment. And so before I, you know, find anyone or am to be with someone, I need to work on letting God and myself meet that fulfillment and putting my priorities in line. And then, you know, that blessing, it could be a blessing that we're together, not a goal or a need that we're together. And also, you know, I was thinking about the spiritual aspect. You know, I think that keeping a spiritual aspect as the goal and center is good. Now, there's plenty of people who watch this podcast who are not spiritual. I think without spiritual guidelines, humans would just go around procreating like rabbits. Yes. I mean, think about it.
Yes.
I mean,
it
would be without spiritual,
I think we've all been there.
Convictions, right? Yeah. I'll leave convictions. We would just ravish the world.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, just do what we wanted to. What is keeping society from doing that? From taking who they want, being what, right? Mm-hmm. There's either laws in place. Well, there's no laws against sleeping with multiple people or, you know, dating multiple people. No. There's societal constraints, but I still think that comes from conviction. I do, and a spiritual aspect, which is good.
On who you're on, like as far as like your friend group, some people may encourage it. So I mean, then it's not. It's not a societal constraint.
I can attest to that, and you know, and like I was thinking about being with someone. You know, whose idea was it for us to be in a relationship? It was God's, right? Everything was good. If you go back to Genesis, you know, he made it, it was good. He made it, it was good. He made it, it was good. He made it, and it was very good. And the first thing that was not very good was our aloneness. Mm-hmm. You know, so I'm saying a gift of singleness is a gift, and I am loving it, you know, working on me and growing in me. And I've honestly never felt better. Yeah. You know, if he opened up doors and I started dating someone tomorrow, great. You know, it is what it is. But I'm not needing it right now. It is not something that would fulfill me any, you know, right now.
It's not your active
It's
pursuit.
Not my goal. It's not my drive. And, you know, but I do think that I don't believe in soulmates and that kind of, I just don't. I was so big on, like, I want to know if they're my person. But then very quickly, anyone can become your person. Mm-hmm. And then when anyone can become your person, everyone becomes your person or a potential person. I could go and sit in a restaurant and there's 4 attractive people my age, like, ooh, I wonder which of those could be my person. Like, you know, it turns into, I'm not saying that actually, but I'm saying that it's what it can turn into, right? And so I don't think the fallen world would have ever invented monogamous marriage. The fallen world would have been like, sleep if you want to, you know, take what you want to. So I do think that putting a higher emphasis on it and making it, you know, symbolic of, okay, yeah, this is what God wants, but then it turns into, okay, well then your goal and your purpose then I think became not yours, mine, people's, becomes then twisted. And then I end up going, okay, well, you know, even now, what's purpose? I want clarity, you know, or it was could so-and-so be my person? Is that who I'm supposed to be with? And it was clear. So often I found myself going, man, I just want clarity on the topic. But I think that so much of clarity comes from commitment and comes from sacrifice. And that's the one thing I wouldn't do is I had a very hard time with commitment because it was a needs-based. It was, well, I don't want to commit to them, or I don't want to date them exclusively, or I don't want to marry that person, even though they were great. It was, well, what if they leave me? What if they don't love me? What if they fall out of love with me? It's all the what ifs and everything else. And it was, well, what if they don't act a certain way? None of that was me showing love. None of that was love itself. It was a lack of, and it was, I call it a lack of clarity. But at the end of the day, it wasn't a lack of clarity. They probably would have loved me just fine, and they probably would have been great. And, the people who had the green flags, but then the red flag chicks in the moment, they can say and do all the right things. And they can have you wrapped on your finger. And the whole time you're going, this is a red flag chick. I know it. But they say and do, and they feel that validation. They feel that void, and they make you feel good in the moment. And it's...
That is not their first red flag rodeo.
It is it is nowhere close to their first rodeo. And those are the ones that you're captivated to, And then it just causes more confusion because you just have even less clarity. Mm-hmm. But I think that so much of clarity and wanting that clarity just comes to commitment and sacrifice. And by sacrifice is doing things the right way. And God provided a great example of how we'd have relationships, and putting God in the center and making it the purpose and goal, and having that commitment, having that sacrifice, and then I was in a stage not too long ago, just, working through issues, and still am. And then like grieving about, poor choices I made in the past or failed relationships. And Rod, who was on episode 1, he sent me a great quote this past week. He said, grief is the price of love. And he said, it's a passage of a place you need to get through, not dwell in. And I thought that was pretty good, pretty good as far as like, it doesn't mean that there wasn't love there or anything. And maybe that helps someone. There's a couple of students that messaged me this week and they're going through breakup troubles or whatever. And, just work on letting that identify, it's a price of love there. But don't let that be a place you can dwell in. And I know some people at Christmas, your loved ones aren't there anymore. I think that's another good encouragement. And so just different things that I was looking at. We were talking about confidence earlier, and I made a journal entry, I think it was yesterday, 2 days ago. But I talked about the war of attrition, how we can slowly give up ground to either temptation, or to going back to old ways. I was the king of that. I would make some pretty good change and progress. But then there was this war of attrition. Either I wouldn't see results or I wouldn't get what I wanted. And I don't mean they didn't do something for me. It was just maybe I didn't get a long-term goal met, or something like that. And very slowly, it was this process of wearing down myself, and the enemy did a great job of that. And it would just continue. So attritional warfare, like going back to attritional warfare, and this is what we see in Ukraine right now. It's the process of winning little small victories. It could be just basically a loss of personnel, loss of equipment, loss of supplies. You are slowly, Greg and I use the term in class, whittling, right? In blade class, we whittle people's hands back in. It's slowly whittling away at the enemy. And the enemy in attritional defeat is slowly just taking baby steps. And I was sitting there praying the other day, and God's like, you're losing that war of attrition. You're going back, you need to spend some time taking bigger strides. You're not seeing the results that you want, whether it's at the gym or, the ex, or, haven't heard from her, or something. It could be just anything. Yeah. And it's like you're not seeing the results that you wanted, so you can quickly start taking those small steps backwards. Little small steps backwards, I can justify very easily. But little small steps backwards very quickly in a loss of the war. Mm-hmm. And so to me, it's like, you're losing this. It's an attritional defeat. You might start with, I just want to be single, or I'm waiting for, so-and-so to happen. And then you start going back to old ways. And and I was sitting there praying about it. And I think what I tied it back to is fear and lack of trust, either lack of trust of God that he's going to do something, or lack of trust of myself that I'm, can do something, or lack of trust in a situation. And it also comes down to lack of confidence. And I said that most of the time, that I'm going to win mentality that I possess in life, or in, shooting or whatever, can quickly, we don't see the results that we want, or we don't get what we want, or, we're all in. I'm either all in, or I'm usually all out. And so whether it's maybe a relationship, you're not getting the results that you wanted, or you started to change and she didn't get better, or whatever. And we lose that mindset of, I'm going to win. I'm going to take this goal, take this accomplishment, take this objective. And my whole life, Rod and I were talking about this week, I'm so objective oriented. It's just ingrained in me. Conquer the objective, get the objective. I've got to win. I'm very mission driven. And I don't see the mission going like I want it, no matter what the mission is. And that violent mindset starts to dissipate. I start to lose that will to fight. And so you're subtly, and I call it, you're quietly losing, right? Mm-hmm. It's a subtle, quiet, bit by bit loss of ground to that war of attrition. And it comes back to lack of violence, and this could be physical battle, or it could be mental battle, like lack of violence to confront the enemy, or confront myself, or stand up to myself, or it could be me just slowly losing that mindset of aggression and winning. And now I might not want to stick to my goals that I set. I might not want to stay in through the duration. I might want to jump at the first chick that gives me her number. It's something like that. It could be a lack of confidence, and we are called to stand firm and stand fast and hold fast. And I think that very quickly, you can subtly, quietly, bit by bit, stop trying, and then you lose the war without us thinking that we're losing the war.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so
we want to do it in our timing. We don't want to do it in God's timing.
Oh, right. God's timing is never wrong, and that's something I battle all the time. Being so mission driven and goal driven, and objective driven. I just want to conquer. That's my mentality. If you guys know me or take class, I am so mission driven all the time, and it can be a good thing, mm-hmm. and it can also be a bad thing.
There's a time and place for it.
Yes. What it comes down to is, I think it's easier for us to surrender, quit, to give up, and I see this with shooting. And it finally clicked on me this week. I was working through some issues, and this is why I love my single time. And, God was talking about like losing that war of attrition. And, so it could be like, I was originally waiting for the ex to come back. Like, and that's just something like I wanted to happen. And just trying to like work through, and, where's my heart, still there or not. And just trying to just deal with all that. And it's easier for me to say, no, I'm not going to wait. I'm going to jump at the next thing that comes by. Or I'm not going to, let's say she's completely gone. I'm not going to take this time to work on myself. Or I'm not going to take this time to grow and spend time with God, or enjoy my gift of singleness. It's so much easier if you subtly back out, or just subtly start losing ground, because then it's not a loss. If I'm giving up ground, it's not me losing ground. Think about it. It's a lack of, it's not a loss. So students who all the time, I didn't try on that drill, or they'll goof off during class because they actually don't know the answer, or they turn it into a joke, or they don't take, I have so many times people go, I don't want to, Britt, our wonderful podcast director, for her first handgun class. It's like, well, I don't want to shoot in front of other people. Okay. Well, you're going to have to. And so why? They don't want to see it as a loss if they don't ever do it to begin with. If I give up that ground it's not a loss anymore.
Yeah.
You know,
I gave that up.
It's a choice. It's my choice. You know, if I jump to the next thing and don't work on myself, or maybe even give the X time to come back, or, you know, if I said 6 months, give it 6 months. If I just, let's say I move on in the meantime, it's not a choice then. It doesn't matter. It is a choice. It's my choice. It's not a loss. It's not a blow to me. It's not a blow to the ego or whatever. What it comes down to is me trying to stay in control. And that's what we see in relationships. People won't commit because, you know, or they overcommit, or they end up cheat because they think, oh, my spouse doesn't love me anymore, and they cheat. Or what? Because it's so much easier to take that loss on your terms.
Yeah.
And it doesn't affect. And we see that in TAC med class. I won't even talk about which one, because it happens in all of them. There's always some dude that gets shot in the pinky finger. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, I'm out. Or I know for a fact he didn't get hit, and he's the last one standing in like on his team. Yeah. And he's like, oh, I got shot. No, you didn't. Like, nobody was even shooting at you at the time. He's like, no, I'm hit. It's easier for you to choose to take that loss because it's not a loss. It's a choice.
Yeah. Or whenever we go to do scenarios, people will be like, oh, well, I think I'm just going to sit this one out. It's like, you need to put these skills to the test to see really what's going to happen.
Yep. And I did. And I was in a journal about it. It's like, you know, all it comes down to is me trying to stay in control. If I choose, it's not an unknown failure. Yeah. If I go ahead and make that choice now, even if it's the wrong choice, it's not the possibility of a failure. And, you know, and that's the thing is I so often think, like, God doesn't fail. He might not bring the X back, but he's going to bring something better, because that's covenant. Like, we got it. Like, we already got the answer. I might not know what it looks like, but we got the answer. And he doesn't fail. So if he doesn't fail, then what are you freaking out about and trying to maintain control over? You know? And so I think that we try to keep it from being a measurable failure. But all that is, if I start giving up ground, that's just more ground for the enemy to have footholds and attack me in. Physically, right? I'm talking about physical warfare, but also spiritual warfare. You know, I said to myself, you know, so many times people could have pulled out before they lost and didn't. And that's where immeasurable success comes from. Stalingrad. Stalin could have left Stalingrad, pulled out to avoid that loss, that unknown failure, potential failure. The fact that, I mean, maybe he should have, but the fact that he didn't defied every military strategist, defied odds. He just kept hurling things at it. And had they have surrendered Stalingrad, I'm sure they would have lost the war. I mean, historians argue about that all the time. The fact that they stayed in there and didn't get that unknown loss and stayed in that fight so long, committed, had the, like I said, commitment and sacrifice. They had commitment and sacrifice. Enemy couldn't use that as a foothold. That turned the tide of the war, you know. And so we see so many times where, like, we do have the victory. We just don't stay in the fight and hide behind excuses and hide behind poor choices and don't have the confidence. Yeah. That's where confidence levels come from. I mean, so yes, we're talking about relationships, but dude, we're talking about life right now. Confidence levels are the key here.
And we, talking about that, I mean, we see the same thing in the gym. Right whenever you think people are going to make something really big happen, or right whenever they're fixing to turn the tide of how they're doing stuff, that's when they'll quit. Oh, well, I need a week off, and then a week turns into a month, and then the month turns into, oh, well, I ain't going back. I'll start next year. I mean, it's stuff like that. So, yeah, it's like what you're talking about. This isn't just relationships. This isn't just training. This is life. I mean, it happens on any and everything.
Yes. And I think so much of it, I compare it back to shooting. I said, it's going to be hard. Some guys will come up to class and they have maybe, you know, Weaver stance with their 1911 and their, you know, weird turtle, and, you know, they're sitting here with their teacup, and you can shoot teacup and be very accurate. I've watched it happen. You can shoot rifle weaver with poor grip on the rifle, but you could hit very accurately. Then I come in, I change their stance, I change their grip, I change all kinds of stuff. And then they go, well, I'm shooting worse. Well, you're shooting worse because you just changed what you've been doing. Mm-hmm. It could be hard, right? I mean, you may be more accurate plinking your cans in the backyard with your Weaver teacup. I'm not disagreeing with you. But now shoot 3 targets, 3 rounds apiece quickly. It doesn't work like that, And so I think the problem is that we are so quick to measure better when sometimes our measuring of better is not even the right measurement. And it's going to be hard to do things a new way. It might seem like you're going backwards if you do things a new way. When I reset your trigger pull, you might not be as accurate, but if you keep working the consistency in time, you're going to be far more accurate than you were before. If I fix your trigger pull. And so I think that we shouldn't compare standards. And I think that we shouldn't accept the loss to consider that a gain.
Yeah. Just because it's on our terms versus.
Right. And it's all relative. People ask, well, what's better? What's a better gun? The Springfield Prodigy or SIG 365 XL?
Yeah.
Okay. Shot both those today. That's what Tim and Britt carry or had shooting. Okay, my question is going to be, what's better? What are you measuring? Is it for EDC? Is it for competition? Is it for home defense? And I hear some students go, well, my marriage isn't getting better, or the relationship's not getting better, or the relationship's getting worse, or I'm not getting better. I'm taking time to be single, and I'm not happier. I'm not better. I'm guilty of that. Redefine better. So I can tell you that a SIG 226 is my favorite handgun. Is it what I carry? No. Carry SIG 229, right? And so is it better for carry? No. I love my M40 bolt gun. Is it better than my Mark 12? What am I shooting? And so I think that just because we're not seeing better means that we don't have relative purpose, or maybe don't have the purpose in mind that we need. So think about the purpose, and also think about it's not you that measures better all the time. Sometimes God is fulfilling your hopes and dreams, just not in the ways you thought was making it, or he should be doing. And so just because we don't think that we receive better doesn't mean it's not better. And somebody said something about the X. She's like, well, what's better for you might not be what's better for her. I was like, oh, that's something to think about, right? If you love that person, value that person, what's better for her may not be what's better for me. And then we're losing sight of what better actually is and the purpose behind better. I think at the end of the day, we just need to, so I said a note, we think we know better than God a lot of times, insisting on not our timing, which you and I talked about earlier. We're used to everyone being bad. And then when you have better, you can't believe in better, or you lose sight of better. We've dated terrible people. Then I've dated good people. And I refuse to believe that the good people are any different than the bad people. I treat them the same. Mm-hmm. We can't handle better. Or, God has his promise. He's going to do better. So he promised Abraham, right, that they were going to conceive a child. And he thought, okay, well, maybe, yeah, but maybe it's because I'm actually supposed to sleep with a servant. That is, I'm going to go back to Jenga. No, that's not what I said. But we think we know better, or we can justify ways to get to what we think is better. Mm-hmm. None of that was better. He thought that was the way to get to better.
Yeah. Well, it's not. I'm conceiving the child, so that's part of we.
I am fulfilling God's mission now through an ulterior.
You can justify anything.
I can justify anything. Let me tell you. And so I think that so many times God had that promise, and we don't match his timetable, or we don't wait for the better promise, and we settle. And then that situation diminishes, or So I'm gonna say, be patient. I think Pastor Stephen Ferguson was talking about that. He said it's the right word, but the wrong womb. and so I think that we oftentimes fail to see the miracle of God because we don't wait on it, or we don't want to see that it's better. Me being single right now, I never would have said me being single was better.
Oh, I know you wouldn't.
I
can attest to it.
Oh, I know. We've been dating for like 3 years. Yeah. Until now, the clarity's come in. The clarity only comes, I'm telling you, write this down for 2023. Clarity comes from sacrifice and commitment. I've committed to try to stay it that way. I've had the sacrifice, and now it's going, no, I see this has been better the whole time. Working on me has been better. Then I can be better for someone else without needing them. That's what it's all about.
Getting to view it from the other side of the fence.
Exactly. I think just so many things biblically come from things that seem dead. A shoot from a stump. We look at a stump, we're like, oh, it's just a dead object in the way. But a stump can still bear a shoot, and that can bear a tree. If you cut a tree down, the roots start going in panic, and they start producing a shoot. And so you can have a shoot from a stump. And so I just think that we have to remember that he is good, and we have to, I guess, not look at the circumstances in the moment sometimes. We have to just commit to them, sacrifice to them to get the clarity that's on the other side. I said he will show you what you don't know, and so he might not grant the wish that you think, but he will show up regardless, love you through it, and look out, for you in the end. We just might not be the way that we think. And so in the meantime, stay committed, sacrifice, look out for others and not yourself. If I were to jump into a relationship with someone right now, that would not be looking out for their best interest. It just wouldn't be. And you know that. And so while it might be the easy route, it's certainly not the right route.
Yeah. It'd be instant gratification versus
it's right word, wrong womb kind of thing, and so just I said something for me anyway. Leave time, put others first. In the meantime, learn to sing the signal to me that I'm still doing work. Mm-hmm. I said earlier, I say this now, always be doing work. I'm so mission driven. Me taking this time, I feel like felt in the past like I wasn't accomplishing a mission or a goal. My mission, goal, and purpose just changed. Yeah. Just like we talked about with med classes. Mm-hmm. Stop the bleed kits, anything. It just changed, right? Stay in that mindset. Don't stop. You're still fighting. You're still having victory. Just stay planted. Make sure your cup's fine. My cup's fine. I don't need someone to fill it right now. I don't need something to fill it right now. It's okay. And just be sure that you're just focusing on the normal day life. I said something in the last podcast that Jesus, when his first miracle was turning water into wine, and it was in normal, everyday hand-washing jars. And there's no coincidences. If you go back to the story of the Bible, I was talking about, it's Christmas time. So the swaddling clothes. We've heard all the time. Angels came to shepherd and swaddling, baby wrapped in swaddling clothes. We all know the story. So those shepherds, and I said this in podcast 3, were not normal shepherds. They were shepherds who were used to raising sacrificial lambs. Mm-hmm. That's why they were special shepherds raising special lambs. They weren't normal shepherds. Swaddling clothes, if you go back to the original biblical text, we think of swaddling clothes as like a baby onesie. It's not. Swaddling clothes was actually strips of cloth that those special shepherds used to bind these special sheep when they were babies. So these babies had to be spotless, without blemish, and a chief priest would come and inspect them to make sure that spot or blemish. So the lambs that were going to be used to sacrifice had their legs tied by the original translation of swaddling clothes. So these special shepherds knew what the swaddling clothes meant. And none of that was coincidence. Yeah. And there's so many, I could get into it. I don't want this podcast to run too long. There's so many amazing supernatural ties if you dive into the true conduct, just of the Christmas story, something that we were talking about over the table family. And this is like that throughout everything, life, scripture, everything. And so I think that just because you might not see it, the wise men wouldn't have got the picture of swaddling clothes, but those shepherds did. The wise men got a different word, who were magi, who there was more than 3 of them, and we've twisted that whole story. they are the ones that was revealed that he was going to be king. That sect of magi, that the wise men, as we call them, were actually the magi's that, if you look, kings were scared of, because they could either put a king in or take a king out. Their word was he's going to be a king. So many things we miss because maybe it's not our word, or it's not, the way that we're interpreting it, but it's there. And it doesn't mean the story is not being written and it's not happening. So with relationships, just know that purpose and mission drives everything, and fix yourself in 2023 before you start. Anything else you're talking about?
Yourself right.
Mission or objective in relationships?
What?
Anything else you want to talk about for mission, objective, relationships?
No, I think we covered pretty much all of it. It's sometimes you got to delay your gratification to meet your long-term goal, I think is the end thing that I've got.
Nice. All right. Man, thank you for being here. Guys, thanks for watching.